Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Masters of Self University podcast. I'm your host, Ellie Lee.
And I'm your host, Morley.
And man, I was reflecting today with you on how it is almost July of 2023, which is wild to think about. And, we just moved here to San Diego in January. And so just seeing that it's been 5 months of living here and everything that we've experienced is definitely one for the books. And there hasn't been a moment this year where it's let up for me personally, but also this beautiful time to reflect on how far we have come individually on our journey. Lots of roadblocks, lots of, am I ever going to get up? And is this ever going to be okay? And then a lot of moments of like real beautiful growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've definitely had lots of growth and lots of roadblocks. One of the roadblocks that I've really been working through recently has been the fact that I wasn't fully embodying one of the teachings that we have, which is becoming the mystical parent. And there's a lot of inner child work out there. A lot of the inner child work I've done before MSQ is all about connecting to the inner child, which is really beautiful. And a lot of it is working on healing the inner child. But part of healing the inner child is allowing the inner child to actually elevate, to mature mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And that is still one of the parts that I'm working on within myself, especially with certain programs like entitlement, where this is one that I've been getting into recently, where there isn't pain behind the program. It's more just, I need to mature the inner child. Like the inner child, because of permissive parenting, which is the parenting style, this is another thing we go over in the course whenever we coach people. Because of I had permissive parents, it creates a certain level of entitlement, or it can do within an inner child, where they learned at a young age that they don't have to listen to whoever is guiding them or teaching them, because whether or not they got told they could or they couldn't, they still got the same way. And this is so deeply ingrained within me that there's no particular pain behind it. There's just a program that's in there that all I get to do whatever I want. And that's been really disconnecting me from my highest path. Because there's a child inside, like 4 or 5 years old, who's making a lot of their decisions and doesn't want to grow up and wants to stay at the young age where he can make all the decisions and he does whatever he wants. He eats ice cream when he wants, he eats chocolate when he wants, and doesn't do necessarily the things that I want to do to progress in my career or in all facets of life.
Are you cool with kind of breaking down in real time? Because this was something that we actually did together as a group, work on Danny's triggers, just as practice as coaches. And it was fascinating because you were the first person that's ever moved anyone through this particular trigger. And to see what we saw as it all started unraveling was incredibly educational and fascinating. I think could help a lot of people. So why don't we start with the trigger? What was the trigger?
Yeah, well, the trigger was my beautiful partner here, Ellie, asking to make some social media content. And this is something that I'm always wanting help with. But when it came to actually like coming over and asking and saying like, hey, let's or suggesting, let's go do this if you got time right now, I found myself getting really annoyed.
Okay, what were the mental programs?
Yeah, so I started like just thinking, I can't believe she's asking me this. Like, can she not tell that I'm triggered right now and I'm in pain and I don't want to do this. I don't have time for this. I don't want to.
Why is she asking me to do something I don't want to? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or I'm trying to think of anything else. Why is she making me do this? It felt like in that moment that you were forcing me to do something against my will. And it's interesting to, at the place where I'm at, to have the experience of feeling my inner child show up. And when you're first starting this work, that might not be the case. You might not realize that they're showing up. And there are certain parts of us that live completely unconsciously and don't realize we are our inner child in those moments when we are triggered and running programs. But in this moment, I could feel it come online and I could feel how annoyed he was. And then I was still in like the seat of my awareness, observing that this shadow aspect of me had just shown up, which is really interesting, like experience to have.
Yeah.
But it was very powerful because I could feel the intensity of the annoyance that was under there and wanting to project it onto you. Now, as I say, because I've done this work for a while and I was grounded, like more, I was in the observer position. I was able to know it was nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
However, maybe a year or two ago, I would have just projected everything like onto, and you could feel how annoyed I was.
Yeah,
right?
You're really annoying. So that was the emotional program, big time. And you felt like too very frustrated at me, and I hadn't done anything.
Super frustrated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a sprinkle of anger. I felt that too in you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I'm like been working on recently about allowing myself to bring this anger online.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was there just a tinge.
Yeah. And then as we were breaking it down, we asked you how old you felt, right? And then you had this beautiful moment of like, moms.
Yeah, well, it was definitely like, I could definitely, as we were going into it, like I could feel the entitlement piece there. I could feel that I was being entitled and that I didn't want to do what I felt like you were making me do.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that was all a projection. So I could feel that it was with my mom. And it was stemming from the permissive parenting. But I wasn't sure on exactly how to heal it.
Yeah. And for those of people who don't know, permissive parenting is a parent that doesn't parent you. You know, they just let you do whatever you want to eat, whatever you want to do, you can just go do it. And it was interesting when I was in the class and as you were moving through this, and I'm looking down at my paper and I'm writing down, you know, everything that we're moving through, which is the shadow blueprint and putting it all together. And all I felt when I'm looking down, I'm like this, he's a brat. That's I kept feeling like he's a brat. But how do you move someone through this? Because that's where the program of entitlement is really tricky, is what we learned through this process. Because what I was feeling from you wasn't this pain and I'm sad.
Yeah.
And, you know, Rachel started breaking down like truly what the program of entitlement is. And it doesn't feel sad or in pain. Yeah.
No, it's more just cold is the way she was describing it. And yeah, so yeah, trying to think where to go from there. Yeah,
I mean, it was just beautiful for you, you know, totally where you were not in resistance to it at all. You were really open to the fact that like you were running entitlement, and this is a result of what permissive parenting does, right? When you allow your child to do whatever they want, and the moment you say no and put up a boundary, the kid starts running these programs, right? Of, I can't believe you're telling me what to do. I can't believe you're asking me to do this and blah, blah, blah. And what Rachel beautifully was guiding us through is how you were dishonoring mom.
Yeah. I felt dishonored in the moment. I felt like she wasn't honoring my pain I think when that interaction happened between you and I think I was already kind of like, I was already triggered and moving through something, and then you came over, and I think that was where the dishonoring was, which I don't think I fully went into that in the session. But what was really happening, even though I felt dishonored, was I was dishonoring my mother's word, and I was disregarding her authority as my parent, as my guide.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, that's common with permissive parents. And yeah, there's a lot of where I was led to is seeing as there was a lot of victim consciousness, a lot of which is powerlessness, helplessness in there. And yeah, I had to really look at the fact that I was just being a brat and I wasn't kind of getting my own way, and had to work with and I still am working with my inner child to elevate him, to not just give him, I mean, in that moment, giving him unconditional love would look like calling him out on his bullshit.
Yeah.
And calling him out for his dishonoring and showing him what it, oh, you're running these programs. You're choosing right now to remain as a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old. So you have a choice. You can either continue, and you might be frustrated by this, and that's okay. You're allowed to move through whatever temper tantrum you're having. But when you move through that, you can then choose, do you want to remain in this, or are you ready to start growing up?
Yeah. Yep. And then Rachel took it a step deeper and went into that little bit of anger that you were feeling. And what she basically was saying is when a child has a permissive parent and they're showing up, this anger is showing up, it's because the little kid does want guidance and wants the boundary. And so when the parent is not providing that, all of a sudden, bam, there you go. It's birthing the program of anger.
Right.
This anger, this resentment, this frustration that the child is feeling because the leader is not leading.
Right. And that's something, this is a wound that I've been working on. I remember starting to get into it last summer. So it's been a year now. I've not got fully to the bottom of it, because I think before I was looking for pain. And there was pain attached to it. And there still is some pain in there. There's the pain. There's this recurring wound that I have of this pain of not being guided. It got triggered last night, and there's this has been coming up a lot. This feeling of desperation, like there's this part of me that's just crying out for help. Like, please, somebody help me. I need help. I need to understand what the hell is going on, why I'm making all of these mistakes, why I'm repeating these patterns. And I don't know what to do. And I don't feel powerful enough to do it alone. And it's this constant feeling of desperation. And underneath, that's where the anger I felt is tied in, where it's like, I'm angry because I feel like nobody is guiding me.
Yeah.
And one of the other coaches was kind of relaying her experience with kids, where when you're a child and you're growing up, you start pressing all of these buttons internally and trying to figure out, okay, what happens if I go this far? What happens if I throw this tantrum? What happens if I constantly don't do what they ask of me? Are they going to respond? How are they going to respond? And then what Rachel was kind of guiding us to is, this is what children do to test the parent's level of safety. And if the kid can push all these buttons internally and have all these emotional reactions and do all these behaviors, and the parent is still very emotionally safe, well then, okay, this person is safe, I'll listen to them. But when that doesn't happen, and either the parent screams or doesn't give any guidance or whatever, pendulum swinging from side to side.
Because I have the extreme opposite of that.
Right.
My parents were not permissive. They were very rigid. So everything that created in me was fear. I was just afraid, and I felt very unsafe, but I was afraid constantly of being yelled at, being told no, screamed at. And so it's about finding the middle ground of all of that in a powerful way. So yeah, it was fascinating.
What was it like? I mean, have you felt into any entitlement programs that you run? Could you relate that at all? I don't know if that that fully relates right now?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely run entitlement. It used to come out a lot when I would work in the entertainment industry. So like being an on-camera personality, a lot of people cater to you because you are the talent.
Right.
And so that program came out of like, do you know who I am? And like, I deserve this and I need that and I should have that.
Right.
And that it was birthed from the fact that like I always felt like nobody cared about me or like nobody saw me. And the moment that people saw me, it was like I took advantage of it. And so thus was that program. So it stems from not being seen for so long and wanting so bad to be seen.
And was that not being seen, what was that a product of? Have you got into
I
that
just
yet?
felt like my parents never like saw me for what I was ever. Like I remember being little and just being like, I'm not good at anything. Nobody ever tells me that I'm good at anything or that I'm pretty or that I'm skinny or that anything, nothing. So that really created programs of I am nothing and I'm worth shit and everyone else is better than me.
Right.
So I think that's the reason why I went so hardcore in my career, because I wanted so bad to be somebody, because if they saw that, then they would go, oh, she is something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you do? Because I know we were talking about the mystical parent earlier. Like,
Yeah.
what have you done to mystical parent like that part of your inner child?
Well, you know what's fascinating is that in 2019, when I started doing the healing work, a lot of inner child work I did was just about kind of remembering wounds, right?
Right.
And what's blown me away about MSU and what Rachel teaches about being the mystical parent really came out like full throttle for me when I was having a conversation with a dear friend who does a lot of work on themselves. And I was talking about my inner child and I was talking about how, she was moving through something really difficult. And this person's response to me when I finished the story was, "Aw, little Ellie is just so scared. And little Ellie just wants to be held and seen and loved." And the moment she said that, I felt me and my inner child literally go, we don't like that.
Right.
Because the energy of that is keeping my inner child weak and coddling my inner child. And what we teach at MSU is grow that inner child's power. Allow them to process in real time what is there. And that's one of the biggest things that I see that's different from this work than everything else. Because everything else is just keep your inner child safe and small and dependent on you. And the work we teach is that little kid is a powerful being. You are a powerful being. So why are you creating codependency and attachment between you and this inner child? Like, allow them to move through this in real time and let them know, like, I'm doing it right next to you, but you can do this. And that's been the most powerful piece of the whole puzzle.
Yeah, I remember back in, when did I start therapy? 2020, 2021, 2020, I think. Yeah. And the therapist was like, just getting me to connect. And I remember we were talking about, I was going on a date and I was going on this date and she was like, just remember that on the date, there's going to be you and your inner child and little Danny, and on for the other person, the lady, there's going to be her and her inner child. And, you're going to be on the date. And that was where I was at. And it was like, show him love, connect with him. And there's levels to this, right? It's like, when we first start personal development work, it's great to start with, connect with your inner child and then learn how to really love them, how to nurture them and be present. But then there is this is the critical piece for me, is like, I've been looping in some of these wounds for the last like 6 months, because all I've been doing is showing the inner child love. And when we do that, I have felt there is a certain level of alchemy that happens. But to really elevate the inner child up and out of that age, like, we do need this piece of maturing and maturing and mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, allowing them to mature.
Yeah.
I'd love to go back to I'd love to go back to the rigid parents.
Yeah.
Because we talked a lot at the beginning with me about permissive, which is that, don't do this, and then the child does it anyway, and then there's no repercussions.
Yeah.
Which teaches that entitlement kind of piece. But on the other side of the spectrum, as we mentioned earlier, like rigidity just creates a lot of fear.
Yeah.
So what was it like for you growing up with rigid parents?
Yeah. I'm an HSP, and I'm extremely sensitive and extremely emotional. And obviously we don't have this language for when I was a child. So I just thought something was wrong with me. And there was a purity about me when I was a kid. Like, people at church used to talk about, like, oh, there goes Ellie. She's always carrying a Bible and making sure that no one's saying like the word stupid. Like, I was just very pure. And because my parents were rigid, specifically, my mother, right? I was just constantly scared. If I was just constantly told energetically and verbally what was up, and it wasn't quaint and nice and easy, it was a lot of fear. And that fear came up for most of my life, until I started really seeing where this fear was stemming from. But I'd go into flight, fight, or freeze if my parents started giving it to me. And that's where I lived in for most of my life. So the rigidity created massive fear in me, which is something that I've had to go into big time this year, because the fear, like, my body starts shaking, and like I literally start twitching, and like it just completely ignites my nervous system. And I lived in that for so long. So it was just, I just never felt safe or happy. Or when everything is controlled with fear, that's a whole other mind fuck.
Yeah.
It's a whole other mind fuck. Because maybe you could say the positive part about it was that I was really a good girl and I always listened and I never really did anything bad. But the other extreme part of it was that I was constantly afraid. I was in this state of terror, like, most of the time, which is not healthy at all.
And in terms of like mystical parenting, what have you done to really work with your inner child in that level?
I've had to really open and feel every single ounce of that fear, which is so hard. And it's been extremely painful. But I know that I have to go through it all to get out, like, truly. And as my inner child is connected to her power and she's opening up to all the fear and the terror and the dread, I allow her to see truth, with a capital T, that mom's was like this because of all of this. And all that stuff of all of the projection and the screaming, and like even my dad, when he would show up really rigid, I can see clearly now it had never anything to do with me, but I took it all personally. I thought I was the root of all this anger, of all this resentment that I was receiving on the opposite end. And so my process with that is, as I'm moving through the fear, as it comes up so strong, it's about, all right, open, little boo-boo, little Ellie, let's open. You can do this. Let's feel it. And even when she's scared, that's okay. You're allowed to feel this is scary stuff. And we have run away from this a lot, Again, I was on antidepressant for a long time, so I didn't have to feel any of this. And that has been so empowering for me to go into it. And I can just feel my inner child. I'm like, she's growing into, right? As she feels every bit of everything that's in there. Is just next level. And you can't explain that to someone unless they've really walked the path themselves of what that really means.
Yeah. And have you managed to mystically parent her to find that safety from within herself?
Yeah. My inner child's at a point now where she understands truly that mom and dad are not going to save her. She's moved through that. Because even up until last year around this time, when I was going through a hard time, I would still be like, I want my mom. I would call her and I would cry. And it's been a year since I've done that. And I know it's because she's growing up and she's seeing like, no one can save you. And like, you want to hang on, but that has never been there and never will be there. And you have you. So that's been huge for me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the mystical parent that we teach at Masters of Self University.
Yeah, and this is going to look different for every different program that we run, and how we parent ourselves, and how we parent as not as coaches, but how we teach the mystical parent for each program is slightly different, because each different wound we have, each different programs need a slightly different piece of guidance, and not letting go of this piece has been like crucial for me.
Yeah.
Like constantly bringing it, okay, go in, feel the pain, open your heart, alchemize. But really, what does this boy need to learn? And we can only really learn, like bring the level of truth. We can only really like instill that in the child and allow them to elevate once we've done a lot of the feeling, the healing, the transformation part. Obviously, it is part of the transformation that kind of locks in everything. And those stages before, I know like you and I, this previous part of this year, like I'd say like the first third or the first quarter, it was a lot of just like gross purification of just allowing ourselves to just feel all of this heaviness, which was kind of like pouring through. And then at least for me now, it's like, okay, now that heaviness is moving, and now I felt a lot of that, and that energy's been releasing through my heart and alchemizing and transforming. It's time to really elevate this child. It's time to bring them into a new level of awareness, and that finishes that piece of integration for that fragment and part of our soul.
Yeah. I mean, at the core of what we teach is connecting you back to your innate divine power. It's simple, but it ain't easy. And it's a process. You know, it's something that I have to remind you a lot. It's something I have to remind myself a lot. I was talking to another coach today, and I was like, man, I just want to be on the express lane, 10 items or less. Let's go. I want this now. And it's a process, and just to surrender and honor what is.
Yeah. And the more that we're able to get out of the idea that it needs to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I've been really feeling the crunch of the collective, like really feeling, okay, Danny, like you've got to hurry up this healing journey and get to the end, because there's people out there that need you to be farther along than you are. And that
very selfless service.
Yeah, but it just ends up like keeping you stuck in your own mind about where you're at and where you're not at. And that's the big part there, which I've been dealing with this as well. And the more I'm able to just surrender into what is here, what is the now, it actually allows all that ease to start flowing.
Yeah. And identifying, what programs are running there.
Yeah.
And patience.
Yeah. And a lack of surrender.
Yeah.
Just a lack of surrender.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, for anyone at home, we are beginning a group class. All right. At Master of Self University, The Power Within, a 3-month program where you will move through this work with other beautiful beings who are so ready to be willing and devoted. So if you want to join the group class, we will be starting in July. Just set up a free consultation with us at mastersofselfuniversity.com and get a copy of Mason's Way, the 20 Universal Ways of Oneness taught by the Spirit of an Enlightened Dog. It is on Amazon by Rachel Fiori. And you're doing the work, guys. And it's not easy, but here you are. And we're just honored to be here with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. Till next time, like, share, subscribe, comment, and we will see you guys then.
Bye.
Bye.